Yes, guys, I've woken up Saturday morning and I want to unpack quickly some of the key takeaways from the Hawthorn and Essendon game. I thought this was a great game to watch, a real tactical battle, one that Hawthorn were able to, I guess, keep Essendon at arm's length. They were able to get dominance at the beginning of the game and kind of the scoreboard sort of dictated, I think, in this game, how things were played out. But some of the stats definitely caught my eye in this one. I think if you're an Essendon fan overall, you'd be fairly happy with the performance, but probably still have those lingering worries that you're not able to capitalize and you're not able to operate inside that forward 50. You generated a lot of inside 50s in this game and didn't get a lot of reward for it. So I want to look at the key stat that surrounds that and a little bit of why Essendon's sort of territory dominance in this game was a little bit fake in some ways, I want to say, and just also how good Hawthorn are at transitioning the football when they win it back off you in the back half and in the mid zone as well. They're just such a good team at the moment. So the first statistic that I want to go to here is just the stoppages, basically. And we're going to have a really in-depth look at the stoppages here. So Essendon have a big hit-out dominance here, 54-34. So they're plus 20 in the hit-outs, which gives them opportunity from clearances. But if you look at the overall clearance number, 50-31, that is a big dominance to Essendon, and it's a real opportunity to get territorial dominance. If we go up quickly to the inside 50s there that are at the bottom there, have a look at that, 58-48. So Essendon plus 10 in inside 50s. Generally speaking, a number close to 60 like that is really good, and generally speaking, you're going to win a lot of games if you have that much territorial dominance. You're able to trap the ball in the forward half and you can score, but Essendon weren't able to do that in this game. So we'll go back to that clearance number there, 50-31. So territory owned by Essendon. But I want to talk about this idea that Hawthorn, they talked about it on the commentary a little bit too, but Hawthorn were sliding an extra player around the ground stoppages behind the ball, and they were basically conceding an extra number at stoppages to the Bombers, which gave the Bombers obviously a better chance at winning some of those clearances. And if we focus and break down the centre clearance versus stoppage clearances here, I think that's a really telling sign in this game. So Essendon 39-16 at around the ground stoppages. That's where Hawthorn have the ability to roll a loose player in behind so they can shield that defense a little bit better. You obviously can't do that at center clearances because you're confined to the 6-6-6. So pretty much it's even numbers all over the ground. And in that phase of the game, Hawthorn actually won the clearances 15-11. So Essendon ultimately weren't winning those really important clearances. If I go over here to a great source for statistics here, Wheelo ratings, where we can have a look at some of the score sources. And the one that I want to go to there is the score origin at the end. And if I wheel that across, you can see the different score sources. From the back half, both teams were pretty even, 50-48. So both teams were able to transition the football. But the big one where Hawthorn had the dominance in this game was those centre bounce scores. So when there were even numbers and they got the ball in quickly, 4 goals, 125 to 0 goals, 2-2. So a 23-point deficit for the Bombers there. And that was pretty much the difference in this game. If you wheel over there to the score sources, which shows kick in, stoppage, and turnover, it's pretty even there from the stoppages. So Essendon were able to generate 15 scoring shots to 11. So in the end for Essendon, that side of the game actually worked for them. Getting that extra at the stoppages was able to generate them scores, but then they weren't clinical enough to be able to finish those scores when they had the dominance at the around the ground stoppages. But I kind of want to highlight there just how much of a difference it is between a centre clearance and an around the ground stoppage with just what the coach can do as far as pulling levers, moving players into different positions and so forth. Interestingly as well there for Essendon, they weren't really dominated aerially and they weren't dominated from that D50 transition, which we probably expect we would see from Hawthorn players like Sicily and Battle and Barras getting in there, taking the aerial intercepts. If we have a look at the intercepts there, Hawthorn made 64-59. So the numbers pretty even there and Essendon were as good. We noticed on the Wheelo scorings, if I flick back there for a second, but turnover scoring 53-45 is pretty close. Defensive half transition scoring 50-48. So that side of the game, things were pretty even. And you look at that from an aerial point of view, just going to some of the marks there. Contested marks were 10-9. It wasn't as if Hawthorn were really smashing Essendon in that phase of the game. So the fact that Hawthorn were leaving that spare behind the ball wasn't particularly hurting Essendon. It was just the fact that when they did get the ball inside 50, they got the ball to ground. This statistic was a massive one for Essendon. That is goal efficiency. Hawthorn kicked 17 goals from 48 inside 50s. The Bombers kicked 12 goals from 58 inside 50s. And that's, again, it just comes down to having those players that can operate in the tight spaces. We've talked about Isaac Kako. He was absolutely unbelievable in this game for Essendon, but you can't have so much responsibility lying on his shoulders. I thought when Gresham came into the game, he was pretty powerful and dynamic down there for them as a small forward. But they probably don't, when they are on those transition phases of the game, if you compare them to Hawthorn sort of holistically, Hawthorn have these guys like Dylan Moore, like Connor McDonald. They get up to stoppage and then they run really hard, really fast back at goal. So when they are getting those inside 50s, they're creating better opportunities compared to the Bombers forwards that are probably a little bit more stationary. If you look at them, they're not as endurance-based. They're not as much of a high running team. So when they come back at goal, they're a little bit more stationary, and that means that they have to work in tighter spaces and under more direct physical pressure than what the Hawthorn small forwards do. Jai Caldwell was absolutely immense in this game. 36 disposals. He kicked a goal. He was tackling. He was in and under. He was winning a lot of contested possession. I guess ultimately, the way that Essendon dominated the midfield from an around the ground clearance part of the game, a lot of those were in vain. They were able to be cut off at some point, and Hawthorn were able to make those really swift, really damaging transitions of the ball. But Caldwell absolutely put his hands up. I think if you're looking at Essendon sort of overall and that midfield group, you're still probably lacking a little bit of dynamism, a little bit of athleticism, a little bit of height in there, if I'm honest. You look at, Caldwell, Merritt, you've got players like Sardis. You're probably going to bring Parrish back into the team. I know Redmond did play in there tonight and did a pretty good job on Will Day, but still, you're comparing that to some of the best midfields in the competition, and you look at that centre clearance scoring number, which is the one that I'm looking at. Players like Merritt and Caldwell weren't able to have the impact of, say, a Will Day and a Jai Newcomb getting out the front of the stoppage and making those really damaging, impactful possessions forward of the ball. For the Hawks, I thought Carl Amon was absolutely fantastic in this game. He was really the one leading that defensive half transition. They were able to win the ball back from Essendon, not necessarily in the air, but win it back a little bit more in this game at ground level where they had the dominance, and then run the ball really successfully out of that D50. I think there's still probably some question marks on the way that the Essendon small forwards or the forward line as an entire unit actually defend the other team coming out of that back six. Something that they struggled with last year, because there's no point getting all of that territory and then not being able to keep the ball locked inside your forward 50. Talking about players for Essendon though, Merritt, fantastic in this game. He just continues to work hard. I think the defensive side of his game is really underrated. And something that you notice as a neutral fan watching Essendon play, just how much he sort of works hard for his touches and puts defensive pressure on the opposition as well. But for me, the absolute A-grade GOAT of this game was Dylan Moore. He was just everything that a modern footballer is in this game. He was clinical when he got opportunities inside forward 50. As I said in the kind of the build up to this, he was able to run so hard, so fast back at goal. He's got that speed and endurance based to his game. So he runs opponents into the ground. He gets space. And like I said, if you can take advantage of those opportunities when you do get them, you can win those contests inside forward 50. And there was that snap. I can't remember if it was the third or the fourth quarter when Essendon were coming really hard at them. Dylan Moore just gets that one opportunity, that snap, just turns onto the right, kicks the goal, pretty much just sinks any hope that Essendon had of winning this game. And I think that's the thing, like Hawthorn in this game, as much as they lost it on the stat sheet in a lot of key areas, they had the lead from the start, right? So they put all that scoreboard pressure on Essendon and they were able to just keep absorbing the punches. They didn't really have to go into that supercharged mode, if you know what I mean. So that is a quick recap of the Essendon Hawthorn game, particularly in relation to that breakdown of statistics and the difference in the clearance numbers that we see. And I just wanted to talk about that. I thought that was a really good game to be able to sort of explain how some of that works and what different teams do. If you like this content, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys tonight on the live stream on True Footy for Collingwood versus Port Adelaide.